Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. It's time for the weekly Wednesday night live stream. Lots to talk about tonight. Stimulus is a big one. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about stimulus. I did a video earlier today, but we've gotten some more information about just how badly the Democrats, messed up the stimulus deal, and how they just gave away all of this political capital for seemingly nothing. For seemingly nothing. Samantha Scyther says, Biden owes me and others money, pay up or lose Congress. I mean, look, that's not inaccurate. That's not inaccurate at all. And thank you for the support, Samantha. And thank you for sharing links to the Patreon and the Twitter and all that. I really appreciate it. Do check those things out, folks. But basically, earlier today, the Democrats announced that they are cutting who gets the stimulus checks. They're basically reducing the amount of people that get them, right? They're basically saying that if you make between 80,000 and 100,000, let's just say you're a single person. There's different categories for couples and families and things like that. So to keep it nice and simple, they basically said, if you make between 80 and 100, you get nothing this time. Last time you got something in those categories. If you made under 75, you got the full check. That didn't change, thankfully. But if you got, say, a few $100 last time because you made 85 grand a year or whatever it was, you get nothing this time. Get absolutely nothing. Right? Nothing. And so what they used to do is after 75,000, they would gradually lower the amount you got until you hit 100 and then you got nothing. Now they start scaling it back at 75 and they finish scaling it by 80. So it's a very quick scale down. So a lot of people that got checks back in December are going to get either a smaller check or no check at all. They're estimating it will affect upwards of 20 million or so, 17 to 20 million people. Now, that means a majority of people are unaffected. Most people are still going to get a check. So that's good. But that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people who now are not going to get help, and they were expecting it because there was no indication at all that the checks were going to be cut. There was that they were going to be reduced. Biden never ran on that. This is beyond the fact that we've talked about this, that it was already sketchy. It was already a bit sketchy to cut the checks from 2,000 to 1,400. But look, if you play devil's advocate, you could say, okay, look, you got the first 6 and then you have the next ones, and so maybe it's fair. But this time, you really do get a sense that this shatters the promise. If going from 2,000 to 1,400 cracked the promise, this broke the promise, right? 100%. Because again, the original deal was $2,000. And the argument was, from Biden and company, was we're basically going to give you the $2K in 2 installments. The 600 you got before in the previous regime, and the 1,400 you got because we're in power now. Again, it should have been 2 plus 6, but let's play along. Let's be gracious to Biden in that scenario. That only works under the assumption that the deal is the same. Because if it's not the same, then you can't argue they're installments of the same check. You can't argue that it's $2,000, 14 plus 6, if the rules for how you get the two halves are different. Tell me if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys? I'm not does that, that's how I've always seen it. Like, if they were being good faith about it, they would keep the 14 as the second installment on the exact same basis as the first 6. Might not agree with it, but I could understand it. What they've done this time is they said to people, we promised you $2,000 checks with the scale back that existed. I'm sure people that made 90 grand a year understood that they get something, but not the full amount. That's the deal. Fair or not, it is what it is. And so you say to that person who makes $90,000 a year in Georgia, who maybe doesn't make that anymore, because that's what they made in 2019, but they're unemployed now, Mrs. Jones, we're going to give you a check for somewhere in between $0 and $1,400, depending on the scale bound. And then, now, for no reason whatsoever, you've eliminated that. There's literally no reason. There's none. People, Dan, F graciousness. I mean, yeah, Dan, what I'm trying to say there is not that I all of a sudden want to adopt Biden's positioning, but more that, if you're gonna engage with them, even on their own terms, they fail the test, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's my positioning there. Now, to be clear, you would say to yourselves, why are they doing this? Well, it looks like maybe Manchin wanted this. Maybe some moderate Democrats wanted this. They're not going to get Republicans. They're not going to get Republicans to vote for this at all. And so there's an article here. By Slate. And just let me, I don't need to put it on the screen, but I'm just going to read you. Here's the headline. Democrats have decided to send checks to fewer people for no good reason. My God, what a bad headline for you. And here's an example. I want to read this to you. This is the paragraph in question. Here, I'm going to drop actually, let me pull this up on screen because I want to read this to you guys. Let me pull this up. Okay, so you see this paragraph right here. I'm going to highlight it. It's okay. As a result, it does not appear that these cuts will actually save much money. So again, the amount of people being affected is substantive. It's like 17 million people, but it's not a whole lot of money being saved, right? The amount of people that make between those amounts of money are relatively small, and it's not a whole lot of cash. So they estimate it's going to save $12 billion, but that's out of an entire 1,900 billion. That's another way of saying 1.9 trillion. A trillion is 1,000 billion, so 1,900 billion. 12 out of 1,900. It isn't even 1% of the whole package. Not even 1%. Of the whole package is this 12 billion they're saving. That's according to Jeff Stein, who's a great reporter, maybe the premier reporter on covering stimulus. And it says here, moreover, according to one Democratic aide, the savings from the checks will not be used to pay for any other priorities the Democrats had hoped to fund, like a potential extra month of unemployment benefits, in part because they are too tiny. Guys, did you guys get that? They're not even going to use that money. Because look, you could hypothetically say, we saved this $12 billion. Maybe what you do is you give more money to the very poorest. Maybe then you could at least make an argument. Maybe it's not politically wise, but you could make an argument. Look, we're helping more people this way. Most of the people that lost the checks, they'll be okay. But the people we can give an extra $100 to, they're going to be so much more, better off for it. They're doing nothing with the money. You already approved 1.9 trillion and you're just going to throw 12 billion. Why? Why take away money from 17 million people? That's the estimate, but it could be higher. 12 million adults and 5 million children. Why take away money from those 17 million people and then do nothing with it? Because there's a political cost to not giving the money out. And so you have to think to yourself, okay, what's a political, we're spending this political capital. What's a way we can recuperate it with the money? We could use that money to do something good. What is it? And apparently the answer is nothing. It says here, multiple Democratic sources also told me that aside from pressure from moderates, party leaders agreed to cut the checks for procedural reasons having to do with rules of the budget reconciliation, the maddeningly Byzantine parliamentary procedures lawmakers are using to get around the Senate filibuster. Under the process, each committee is given a budget cap for what it is permitted to spend. The checks were sliced down a bit in order to make sure that the Senate's Finance Committee section stays under its limit when the Congressional Budget Office scores the bill. So, okay, so that does say that hypothetically, they may be able to add the money back in. Right? They might be able to add the money back in, maybe. So maybe that's the intent, and they don't want to promise anything and then not deliver that either. I mean, I get it. But it seems to me like on the face of it right now, you have a scenario where you are you have a check, you have, this many people getting it. You've promised it to them. Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff and Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams and all the people campaigning in Georgia who rightfully, it was a good move. They rightfully made it about the stimulus checks. It was the right thing. Never said. They never said, we're going to reduce who gets the checks. They never said that. Never said that. I'm just going to grab some water. I'll be right back, guys. Somebody in the chat's like, stop gulping. And I'm like, well, I'm thirsty, so I had to get some water. Okay, there we go. So, I saw a super chat from John Barlich. I just wanted to kind of... And then Joseph right now. So John says, do you think Dems will lose in 2022 if they keep pulling this crap? And I mean, yeah, probably. Look, they have, historically, the party that wins the presidency struggles in the following year. The following election year. So the party that wins in, when Obama won in 2008, they had a fallback. Generally that happens. Whether or not the party does a great job, even sometimes, they tend to fall back. Now, I'm not saying Obama did a great job. I mean, I think a lot of the same mistakes are happening. Too much concessions to the moderates, not enough prioritizing the needs of your actual voters, the working class, marginalized people, the poor, the people that elect Democratic presidents and senators and Congress people. And so there's that again. So you have to think that even if you do a decent job, you might slide back. And there's no room for error. The Senate is literally 50-50, right? You can't lose anything in the Senate. You have to, at the very least, break even. In the House, I think you only have a majority of about 5 or 6. I'm not exactly sure. There's some turnover in the House because there was a couple GOP Congress people that passed away. And then there's some Democrats that have been pulled into the Biden cabinet or are about to be like Deb Haaland. And so their seats will be vacated. And most of those seats I expect to be filled by people from the same party, but you never know 100%. And so all of these things are showing that you're struggling already. You're already struggling. You're already going to struggle. And so, I don't know. Yeah. Like, and you're doing this. You're doing this, guys. Jesus. Like, look, two big things so far. One, the minimum wage. Like, you're letting Manchin and Sinema derail, without a fight, one of your core promises. One of the very core promises from the Democratic campaign was stimulus. Like, that was one of their big promises. Like, Joe Biden did not run a policy-oriented campaign. He didn't. He did not run a policy-oriented campaign. It's not like he had no policy, but he basically ran on restoring the nation, restoring the dignity of the republic, saying to people, Donald Trump is dangerous, he's done harm to democracy, and Biden's right about that. Like, he's not wrong when he said that. And so I'm going to reunify the country and these sorts of things. But he did run on a couple policies. One was public option healthcare, which we've heard nothing about. But a big one was the $15 minimum wage. A big one was the $15 minimum wage. And they said, like, Smokey's being very vocal tonight. But I have fed you, Smokey, for the new folks here. One of our co-hosts, Smokey the cat, sometimes likes to chime in from the nosebleeds. So there, like, the minimum wage was a core promise, and you're just letting them get away with it. Like, you're letting these a few moderate Democrats, 2, 3, maybe if you throw in Feinstein, like, you're letting them get away with it, right? Like AOC notes here, in response to this stuff, conservative Democrats have fought so the Biden administration sends fewer and less generous relief checks than the Trump administration did. It's a move that makes little to no political or economic sense and targets an element of relief that is most tangibly felt by everyday people. An own goal. Like, that's AOC. Like, she's the master of, in a couple tweets, really just hammering home why this matters. Like, Trump can now say, a Trump that might be running in 2024 can now say, Joe Biden's a liar. Joe Biden promised you $2,000 checks, and then they became $1,400 checks, and then some of you didn't even get them. So how can you trust him in 2022? How can you trust Democrats if, they won these Georgia seats and then they did nothing with them? Like, I'm going to deliver. And of course, Trump is being disingenuous. That's not me saying that you should believe Trump, but that, the reason Trump won in 2016 was because much of what he was saying, not all of it, maybe not even most of it, but enough of it was true. The email stuff was overblown, but calling Hillary a corrupt, out of touch, person that doesn't understand or care about the working class was all true. Donald Trump is all those things and more, but it was true, right? So, I mean, yeah, John, to answer your question, they are on pace to blow it. They are absolutely on pace to blow it. The House may be more than the Senate. Senate's always tricky. Like, there are some, because the Senate matters in terms of what's up for grabs. So, for instance, the Democrats might have a pickup in Wisconsin because Ron Johnson is a very, very, like, Trumpian Republican. And I wonder if Ron Johnson is going to find it easy to win in 2022. That state, he seems like he's too conservative for that state. And so like, for all we know, it could be like the midterms in 2020, in 2018, where the Republicans took big losses in the House, but because of the specific seats up for grabs in the Senate, we're actually able to make gains in the Senate. Could happen this time. We don't know. It could be the case that the Democrats end up taking the Senate again, but losing the House. Like, that could happen. But yeah, they're definitely putting themselves at risk. 100%. 100%. More than they already are. On the minimum wage and on stimulus alone. Like, the thing with this is it makes no sense. Like, I'll give Biden credit because I'll do that when he deserves it. The stimulus package, however imperfect, however limited, is incredibly popular. What Biden and the Democrats drafted is a very popular bill. As leftists, we can say it doesn't go far enough, and we should, but, like, let's be clear, the bill is incredibly popular. It has 70+% support. A majority of Republicans support it, and they support key elements in it, like the minimum wage and all these sorts of things. And so the Democrats see that. They see they got a popular $1.9 trillion stimulus bill, and then they see Republicans lining up against a bill that the Republican Party's own voters support. And they say to themselves, well, how can we water down the bill everyone loves? Like, the Democrats somehow managed to draft legislation that was good. They actually did. They drafted legislation that was popular. Like, they actually did politics good for a little bit. And they're like, well, we can't be good at this. We can't be good at politics. We have to be bad at politics. Right? We have to be bad at politics. And so now they're messing with their bill that everyone likes. And so whether you're one of the people that wanted the minimum wage and now it's no longer in there, or whether you're one of the people that got a check in December but you're not getting one this time and you feel lied to, maybe you're one of these people that, was making $82,000 a year, which is good money, I'm not trying to suggest that those people are poor, but now you don't make that much because your industry's been really affected, you're laid off, or you're only working part-time. I don't know. You're just giving opportunities to your opponents. Yeah, like, there's a chance that, say, John Fetterman could win in Pennsylvania. I could see him doing very well. I could see him having broad appeal to progressives, maybe some blue-collar type Trump voters that would really like his aesthetic. I'm actually really excited about John Fetterman. Go check out, I did a video on it. Search, like, you go to my channel and search for it. Just on his ad. John Fetterman's, I hope he wins the nomination, but I think he'd be a great candidate. He's the current lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania, and he's running for Senate in 2022. He would be one of the more progressive senators. He would definitely, if he got elected, he would probably be in the top 5, in the Bernie, Markey, Warren, Merkley kind of wing of the party. So he would be a good addition. No, I'm not saying it's a lot to live on, but I mean, look, if it's like in Canada, in Toronto, 80 doesn't make you rich, you're right, but, most people, even in the biggest cities, live on way less than 80. So my point is, like, I understand that people that make 80 grand a year aren't rich, but they are comfortable for the most part. But the point is, if you're basing it on 2019 data, that person might be living in very different circumstances. So I got some super chats here I want to read first. Karen Sita says, I just want to get to this one first. 50% of people gave a like. What? So that is Karen's polite way of reminding folks to like the stream. If you do that, it helps to promote it. Leave me a comment in the chat. Can I get a Smokey deserves more food in the comments? All those things help to drive engagement for the stream and are greatly appreciated. And just kind of jumping back up here to Joseph, says, so about Texas lifting their mask mandate. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is 100% putting ideology and politics above science and public health and basic human decency. 100%. 100%. Masks work. They're not perfect. They're not without limitations, but they work. 100%. Masks work. They work a lot. And they're more about protecting others than yourself. So the act of not wearing one is not, simply saying that, I don't care about myself. It's really a sacrifice. You're punishing others. You're punishing others. It's more an act to protect others, because the way the mask predominantly works is you cover your nose and mouth. Air particles and fluid particles cannot leave your mask, and so therefore you can't breathe it onto someone else. It does protect you, of course, but not fully. So it's more about protecting others. So if everyone wears a mask, we all protect one another. And so I think that's important. And so for those who don't realize, what Texas did is they went ahead yesterday. Their governor came out and he announced that they are 100% reopening Texas. I don't know if there are any exceptions or not. Texans in the chat, let me know. But it seemed to be that he was saying, like, we're going back to normal. Going back to March of 2020, before all this started, we're going 100% back to normal. And then even as he said that, at the same time he said, and we're removing the statewide mask ordinance. Right? We're moving the statewide mask ordinance. That means that I think local communities, like maybe a specific city, could say we still want them. But in general, it is like people aren't going to have to wear them. Now, individual businesses, some of them have said, like Kroger, the grocery store chain, I think they've said that even if local jurisdictions aren't requiring people to wear them anymore, we're still going to ask people to wear them. Like, that's still something we're demanding. So, like, you need to do that. But for the most part, it really does seem like Texas is like, screw it. We're just doing it. And there's no scientific basis for this. Like, South Dakota, governed by Kristi Noem, a Trump favorite, and I would say she's probably a bit of an outsider. She's still, I think, a little new for the national scene, but I could see her running for president in 2024 or maybe 2028. And South Dakota basically did nothing with COVID. They basically did nothing. They basically said, we're going to let the chips fall as they may, and we're going to do what we're going to do, and like we're going to preserve quote unquote liberty, and that'll be that. Right? Like, sorry, I'm going to get some more water. I'll be right back. Gotta stay hydrated. But no, if you guys remember last week, I put the notice up that I wasn't feeling well and had to go visit the doctors. The medication I got really seems to dry me out a little bit, like in my mouth. So like I've been drinking a little bit more water. So bear with me on that. Feeling great. I'm feeling all the way better, basically. But just to let you know. And so basically, like, they're doing it so that they can make it about liberty and make it about freedom and make it about helping businesses. And people are going to pass away. People are going to pass away. Simple as that. And it's not just going to affect Texans. It's not. It's going to affect everyone that those people come in contact with. And if Texas becomes a growing epicenter, which it probably will be, that's going to have effects on everybody, because those people are still going to travel and they're still going to go visit relatives. And if they live in border communities, say near California or New Mexico and Oklahoma and places like that, they are going to have an effect. This is going to hurt people that didn't have a say in this choice. That includes Texans that don't agree with this, and I'm sure there are many. I'm sure there are many Texans that do not like this. So, well, I mean, we talked about it earlier today where Biden basically called it Neanderthal thinking. No one watched that video, guys. I'm going to be honest. And if you speak to other progressive channels right now, or political channels, views are really down for a lot of people. I think a lot of folks are tuning out right now because they're exhausted, but it might also be algorithmic. Do check out that video after stream. I want everyone to take a look at that one. But Biden basically said, look, we're almost done with this. We're going to have vaccines soon. Hopefully that is the case. And so especially because of that, there's no point in this risky reopening because we're almost done. Like we just got to be strong for a few more weeks, a couple more months, and then maybe we can start look at doing some of the things. But doing it now is going to have a toll. Like Biden said earlier today, like 500,000 plus are gone. They're gone. They're never coming back. 500,000 plus. And that number is going to grow unavoidably, even if you did everything perfectly. No one's denying that. But it really does seem like Texas is like, we want to run for the high score. Like that's what their actions are demonstrating. 100%. John Barlich is saying Smokey is just pissed at Dems for not getting anything done. Yes, indeed. But Smokey's mad about that all the time. So I don't know why tonight would be any particular significance, although maybe he is very angry about that tonight, given what we've been talking about. And Karen Sita said, "Smokey revolution, food for all." He's like the socialist cat. No one can have cheeseburgers until all can have cheeseburgers. If you recall that rather ancient meme now. But yes, Stephen Colbert say Neanderthals. Yeah, I actually made that. I made that point in my video on it. That if the only thing I disagreed with Biden on that statement was that Neanderthals were probably less reckless than Homo sapien texianuses are being right now. So I was like, don't be disrespectful to our ancient relatives, Joe. Okay. John Barlich here says, John Fetterman looks like a bouncer. Yeah, he does kind of look like a bouncer. And like not every politician has to look blue collar. Like you don't have to have a certain look to represent the working class. But it is good to have some of your people look like John Fetterman. Like it's good to have somebody that looks like a blue collar Joe. It helps. Because politics is image. At least partially it's image. And at a time when Republicans are working really hard to portray progressives as like egghead elites, like urban egghead elites, or young activists, it's helpful to have one of your high profile voices look like a guy that like could be a bouncer, yeah, or could be like a truck driver, or could be a crane operator, or a traditional like blue collar job. And I know John Fetterman, he's highly educated, but like his portrayal is I think very effective. I think it's very effective, or at least it could be. It could be. The man has won a statewide race in Pennsylvania. Like, he's already proven he could do it. Like, he won lieutenant governor. So it's not just that he got elected as a mayor or a congressperson in a progressive district. He's already proven he can win statewide. And his story is really good, right? Because his story is he became mayor of a town that was like the poster child for industrial decline. And not only the economic effects, but the social effects, the environmental effects, all these sorts of things. And so, he as a mayor had to deal with the challenges of like the failures of American capitalism, right? And so I think he's going to be a good candidate. I really do. You know, yeah, he looks like a real person. And look, other people look like real people too. Like, real people look like Bernie Sanders. They look like AOC. They look like all these sorts of people. But like, you know, it's good to have a person that in your movement that looks like a regular Joe. It helps. It helps. Especially if in a close Senate race, you need to win white working class men who may identify with this man's way of presenting himself. Yeah, and I mean, look, Anmar makes a good point here. And it goes without saying that, look, some of the attacks they launch at AOC and others, they won't work against Fetterman because he's not a person of color and he's not a woman. You know, that's true. Then that's not me saying, of course, that we shouldn't run diverse candidates. Basically, the entire Bernie wing in Congress are people of color. The squad are all women of color: Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal. The only high-profile Bernie supporter in Congress that I can think of is like Mark Pauken, maybe, who's like not a person of color, right? Or a woman. But that is an advantage. That is an advantage. Andre says, is the merit factoring of stimulus check a final decision or just a consideration at this point? Can we still fight this? Okay, I know from a constitutional perspective, like from a legislative perspective, nothing is done yet. Because, for instance, Bernie has said, you know, I'm going to be introducing an amendment to re-add the $15 back in, which the Senate parliamentarian took out, and Kamala Harris, at least at this point, isn't willing to overrule. So basically, he said, like, you know, I'm going to leave that in for now. Like, I'm going to try to put that back in. So the bill has not passed in the Senate yet. It has not gone for a vote in the Senate yet. So nothing is technically done. The bill, the $1.9 trillion stimulus package, with the $15 minimum wage, and with the without this new phase-in period, without this new thing we've been talking about, has already passed the House. It's already through the House. So if they made no modifications and they vote for it in the Senate and it passes, then it goes to Biden's desk and then Biden can sign it and then it becomes law. Like that's the process. But if they make changes, then they have to send the bill back to the House, basically, for the House to confirm the changes, because the legislation has to match, right? Like because like the House will, if there's amendments, then it changes the bill, right? It changes the bill. So hypothetically, this change, maybe it doesn't get the votes. Hypothetically, this change maybe doesn't pass the House, but I'm not sure if people are going to put their foot down and stop it from passing based on this change. And it may be the case that Republicans, even if a few progressive Democrats do switch and say we're not going to support it, maybe a few Republicans, because this makes the package smaller, will vote yes this time. That's possible. And so, while it's not done yet, it seems like the kind of thing Biden is doing because he knows he has the votes to get it done. So that's my instinct, that it's likely going to happen. Now, that's not saying that we shouldn't have people fight it, of course, but, you know, it's probably going to be a challenge. The Progressive Ranger says, I'm a Texan, and it's absolutely ridiculous to hear Cruz go on to Newsmax and talk about how we can still safely social distance. I mean, I didn't see that clip, Prog, but I mean, I can almost hear him say it in my brain. Yeah. And look, there are ways you can do that to a degree. And some businesses have done that. They've partially opened. You have outdoor seating. You only have half your tables. Everyone wears masks. And so the answer to safe social distancing is that was already being done. Right? Like the things were already being done. Like places were opening under capacity with everyone, both clients and staff, wearing masks. And that's how you did it. Right? That's how you did it. This new reopening is like, it's a real sign that they've learned nothing. It's a real sign they've learned nothing. Or again, they know it, and they just do not care. Like, they just don't care. And in fact, let me bring this up here. This is new reporting. Something I read while I was looking up this cruise thing to see if I could find it. We don't need to see that right now, but according to the Austin American Statesman, which is an Austin newspaper, they basically said that Abbott, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, did not inform 3 of his 4 medical advisors on his task force about COVID about opening. So he's got 4 medical advisors, and he did not tell 3 of them about his plan. So it says here, Texas's top health official said Wednesday he did not speak with Governor Greg Abbott before the governor announced Tuesday he would end his statewide mask order, opening Texas 100%, quote unquote. Reported Asher Price. Dr. John Hellerstedt told lawmakers he did not have a personal conversation with Abbott ahead of the governor's announcement, which has been widely criticized by public health experts, the leaders of the state's biggest cities and counties, as well as federal health officials, including President Joe Biden. So, like, there's a clear sign there. He's ignoring experts. Or Greg Abbott is like, okay, if I don't ask them, if I don't consult my experts, right? If I don't consult them, they can't tell me no. Like, if I don't consult them, they can't tell me no. That's what they're doing. And I didn't know this, but apparently this article linking to a piece from the Daily Beast from yesterday suggests that Texas is actually 48th when it comes to the distribution of vaccinations. So Texas not only do they have all the variants, at least in Houston, it's one of its biggest cities, and not only are they doing this full reopening, and not only are they ending the mask mandate, they are saying to people, saying to people, go about as if this is pre-March 15th, 2020. They don't even have a high level of vaccination yet. This isn't a hypothetical where there's one state that's got like 70-80% of people vaccinated, and then they could say to people, well, okay, we're ready to go. We're ready to go. I would still say in an interconnected country, it's too premature, but you could understand it. Here, it's very clear that they're doing this for ideology. 48th. Now, I'm sure that means per capita, like percentage of people that have gotten, the Moderna or Johnson & Johnson or whatever, Pfizer, vaccine. But you would think that the great state of Texas could do better than that. John Barlich asks, do you think Beta will have a comeback? And do you also think that if he runs against Cruz, he would win? Would he win? I'm not sure if Beto would win or not. He came reasonably close last time he ran. And that was when Cruz was a lot more well-liked before Cancun and all these sorts of things, and before the fallout of this. So I would think he has a shot. Some people are suggesting he run for governor, that he run against Greg Abbott. Beto for me is far too neoliberal, of course, but would he be the best kind of senator you could get from Texas, or the best kind of governor you could get from Texas? The answer is probably. So it's sort of like a balance. Like, would I want Beto as my congressman from New York? No. But would I want him as my congressman or my senator from Texas? Maybe. Maybe he's probably as good as you're going to get. So I do hope he runs. He, like AOC, he was a real leader in helping Texans. If you guys remember, I covered it on the channel. That when Ted Cruz went off to Cancun and went off to CPAC and all these sorts of things, it was AOC and Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro, a lot of Democrats. And in Beto O'Rourke's case, he's not even in office anymore. He's just a private citizen. He's not a congressman anymore or a candidate formally. And they were raising money and donating goods and working at food banks. And Beto organized like groups to reach out to senior citizens who may be isolated without power and water. And it was just a really good act of charity. Right? Just a really good act of charity and of solidarity. And so I think he probably won a lot of goodwill from people. And Ted Cruz lost a lot of goodwill. His poll numbers have plummeted, Ted Cruz, among Republicans and I assume among the general public. But non-Republicans probably don't like Ted Cruz all that much. So like how far can you fall if you're already near rock bottom? But yeah, I would like to see Beto give it another go. I would like to see Beto give it another go. Would I want him as my MLA or MP? No, he'd be far too conservative. We have a chance of electing NDPers here in Kingston. We have an NDP MP, and we have the ridings are mirrored, so we could hypothetically elect an NDP federally. So no, I would not settle for Beto. So one thing I want to note on this, is that while I agree with Biden ripping the leadership of these states, I feel like we talk about this every couple weeks, but we have to talk a little bit about smug liberals. We have to talk about smug liberalism and how it's absolute poison. And specifically, I want to talk a bit about Michael Moore, who basically said, and let me bring it over here. Michael Moore, who basically said, let me put the screen down. So this is Michael Moore basically saying, Texas, we hear you. You didn't want to be part of our electric grid, and now you've removed your mandate and are allowing large crowds to gather. We hear you. I'm not going to say that because I'll definitely get demonetized because that's YouTube will trigger that. So you don't need our precious vaccine. We'll send it to people who are saving lives by wearing masks. He continues by basically saying, let me see, where is that? That was just a clipping, but I want to find the actual tweets he sent. Okay, yeah. Okay, so he continues by saying, let me see. He continues by saying, yes, we must and will find a way to vaccinate the poor people and people of color in Texas. To the Texans who say, hey, it's not me, it's the governor, we'll then impeach and remove him. We're tired of this. Don't mess with Texas. Happy to oblige. By the way, Houston is the first city in the country to record the presence of all the new variants. The rest of us must find a way to protect ourselves from the policies and politicians of Texas. Texas is no longer majority white. The 57% majority is Latino and Black and Asian and Native American. So let's do everything we can to help that majority remove the bigots and ignoramuses from office. It's killing them and it's killing us. Like, look, he says at the end there that he wants to help remove these people from power. Well, he just did everything he could to give Republicans a talking point, right? Like, to give Republicans a talking point against them, right? Like that's what he did, right? He basically said, like, guys, it's just it makes me mad. He basically said, guys, like, you live in Texas, you deserve to perish. That's what he said. You can rationalize it another way, and he tries to cover his butt a little bit by saying, oh, of course we'll help the people that are actually good in Texas. But, like, no, the outcome of that sort of, like, smug liberalism is you hurt the people that need the most help. And you take the exact sort of voter who may vote Democrat, like who's on the fence in a state like Texas, and you confirm to them that the coastal liberal elite, I know Michael Moore is from the Midwest, but like the coastal liberal elite from the blue states doesn't care about you. They only care about you when you agree with them. They only care about you when you vote the right way or say the right things or buy into the PC culture. Right? Now look, that might not be true even, although with people like Moore, it kind of is. And Keith Olbermann basically did something similar. Keith Olbermann was basically like, yeah, like, good riddance to Texas, basically. Like, this sort of thing doesn't help. You've just given Ted Cruz or Greg Abbott or whoever's running for a race in Texas next time the perfect ammunition to basically say, hey, these coastal elites, when push came to shove, they wanted you to be 6 feet under because you voted Republican. How is that for building unity? How is that for building, respectful politics? Right? So, yes, I am in Canada. Yeah, I am in Canada. So it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, guys. Like, I cannot stress enough how unhelpful that is. Look, we can and should, like all of us, we can and should absolutely hammer, like, Republican officials and, like, spokespeople and right-wing media when they spread disinformation to people, especially about something that has, like, such an immediate effect on their lives. We must do that. But fundamentally, we have to, we really have to, like, show solidarity with regular people. Like Michael Brooks, who many of you know, said, be kind to individuals and hard on systems. And in this case, I'm including the operators of these systems as part of the system. Don't be cruel to individuals here who are being, caught in the undertow of this. Yes, Smokey is my cat. Yes, PG. Yeah. Don't be cruel to those people. It's not right. It's not right. Not at all. You want to point out the power grid? Yeah, that's a fair point. Make that point. Make the point that right-wing economic policy is why Texas had such a bad power system failure. Not the only reason, but the reason it was so bad is because they had this right-wing system. And the reason people got $16,000 bills a couple weeks ago is because of like the ultra-free market libertarianism that drove their power system and their power consumer market. And yeah, point out that Texas's officials are basically sacrificing people to the altar of capitalism, and it's going to have long-term consequences. Point all of those things out. 100%. Do it. But, like, know that, like, that must be disconnected from the regular people. And look, there are certain things here, like you talk about, like, oh, like elections. Yeah, to a degree, you know, even with gerrymandering, you can't gerrymander a gubernatorial race because Texas is what it is. Like, it's not like a district where you can carve it up just right to allow an absolute ghoul to be electable. But, you know, with this, it's also about like voter suppression and these sorts of things. The people of Texas do not deserve what's going to happen to them. The vast majority of them don't. And I'm going to be honest, even some of the people that voted for Abbott don't deserve it. And it's not helpful. It's not helpful for blue check libs to get on goddamn Twitter and be like, well, in Texas, you deserve it. You deserve it now. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah, like, this is the lesson here. This is the lesson for how, like, the different approaches. You have that smug liberalism that's like, we're so much better here in Blue Landia. And then you have AOC, you know, a left-wing person, not a lib, but a left-winger, who knows that Texas failed. Who knows that? Who knows that the system that Texas has implemented caused this problem? But what did she do? She didn't sit in New York or sit in DC and, like, just tweet about it and just say, oh, well, I guess Texas, you should elect a better government next time. See you in 2, 4, 6 years. Hopefully you figure it out. She went to Texas and helped people. Right? So that's my view. Like, if you see people doing that sort of thing, let them know it's super counterproductive and it doesn't convert people to progressivism. It doesn't. Like, think of the various groups of people who hear that and, like, what their response would be. So you have conservatives, never to vote for you anyway, but this gives them an absolute weapon against you and confirms their biases that, like, the liberal elite doesn't care. If you're a moderate or you're like a fence sitter, you think, okay, maybe these Democrats aren't so bad and maybe the Republican Party is exaggerating how bad they are. And then maybe I need to look beyond my horizon a little bit. And then bam, you got Michael Moore. You got Michael Moore and Keith Olbermann, hundreds of thousands of followers between them, maybe more. I don't even know. How much does Michael Moore have on Twitter? Michael Moore has 6.1 million followers, excuse me. Absolutely massive account. Olbermann. So I'm not just mocking like randos here. Olbermann's got a cool 1 million himself. So about 7 million between the two. Telling everybody that, you know, and if you're a person of color, or you're from a group in Texas that votes Democrat, you're a Democratic voter, you feel like you're being utterly ignored by the people that are supposed to be your friends and comrades and allies. Right? It's wild to me, guys. Absolutely wild. I want to maybe play you guys a bit of a vid here. This is I want to play this for you. This kind of gets to what we were talking about. This is Chris Hayes, apparently. One of the people I dislike least on MSNBC. I think Chris Hayes is at least decent, right? And so it notes here. Let me pull this up here. I want to play this for you. Get the capture device. This is Chris Hayes, apparently earlier tonight, slamming Joe Manchin for just absolutely scoring an own goal, or forcing the Democrats to score an own goal on this whole package. So I want to play this for you. Let me do that.
Okay, you guys keep talking about the non-existent genitals of an anthropomorphic plastic potato. The president could go about his business and pass a giant COVID relief package without the usual flack from the far-right media. The polling shows the public understands.
Let me just, here, it'll be easier.
The public understands this bill will help a lot of people who really need it. So,
some water.
All of this said, why on earth would you take steps to make it less effective and less popular? And yet today, that is exactly what some Senate Democrats were insisting on. The Washington Post described the move this way. Under the plan for stimulus checks passed by the House, individuals earning up to $75,000 per year and couples making up to $150,000 per year would qualify for the full $1,400 payment. The size of the payments would then begin to scale down before zeroing out for individuals making $100,000 per year and couples making $200,000. Under the changes agreed to by the Biden and Senate Democratic leadership, individuals earning $75,000 per year and couples making up to $150,000 a year would still receive the full $1,400 payment. However, the benefit would disappear for individuals earning more than $80,000 annually and couples earning more than $160,000. Around 12 million fewer adults and 5 million fewer kids would get the stimulus payments under the new Biden-Senate compromise, according to preliminary estimates. A lot of those adults are voters who will now get less in direct cash assistance from President Biden than they did from Donald Trump. Why would Democratic senators like Joe Manchin and Jeanne Shaheen push for this to happen? Honestly, could Joe Manchin...
So let's I didn't know Jeanne Shaheen was doing this. I believe she's from New Hampshire or whatever. Can we get a F Jeanne Shaheen in the chat, please? Just so we can't ignore her.
All right? The guy got reelected in West Virginia. It's like the Trumpiest state in the union. There's all kinds of things that he has to do all the time that are going to frustrate, infuriate progressives. But explain this one to me. It's not even like there's some obvious lobbying reason. It's like...
In West Virginia, this bill is popular. The governor of West Virginia, a couple weeks ago, went on CNN or some other network and basically said, yeah, we got to go big on stimulus. He's like, I'm a conservative guy, but this is the time for government. It's this moment.
The big donors don't want this to happen. There's not a political reason. This is not some fraught issue like abortion or guns. There's no group out there that is single-mindedly focused on making sure the people who make $85,000 a year don't get a check during a pandemic. Who cares? Who's opposing that? And on top of that, on top of all of this, keep in mind the big gains the Democratic Party made with college-educated voters in metro areas, particularly suburbs. A lot of those people are the people making the amount that are now going to get shut out of stimulus checks. There is nothing more than a reflexive, almost neurotic, compulsive desire to signal moderation by making things worse, both substantively and politically.
That's a great line. That is a great line. Again, Chris, he still works for MSNBC, guys. He still works for MSNBC, so I get it. He's still a lib. But, guys, that is a really good way of putting it. That is a really good way of putting it. Right?
And I have personally watched this neurosis in the Democratic Party for the 20 years I've covered politics. Much of it has been banished and wrung out. But what on earth are you thinking? Heather McGhee is the board chair of the Color of Change and the author of the Sun.
So I wanted to play that for you guys. That was posted just a few minutes ago. So what do you guys think of that? Again, I think Chris Hayes is one of the least worst people on MSNBC. For those who haven't yet, please click that like button. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Get daily politics from a progressive perspective every day on the channel through videos. We stream once a week on Wednesday nights and occasionally additional streams. Maybe I'll be streaming more. I'm not sure yet. So that line there is crucial. That one line. Democrats signal being moderate by making policies worse. They signal being moderate by making policies worse. That's the way to put it. Right? Like, that's the way to put it, because again, like, we talked about it. We talked about it earlier tonight. Maybe Chris Hayes was watching the stream and he got his idea for his monologue, but probably not. But we talked about this earlier, where we made it very clear. Like, look, we have, a bill that's very popular, that a lot of people like, that a lot of people see as benefiting them, that it has support not just from progressives, but from moderates and from independents and from Democrats or Republicans and from people in all sorts of different states. It's a good policy. We should run with it. And they're not. And they want to ruin it. They want to ruin it. Like, they want to ruin it. I don't know. There's no point here. Like, again, it's not like, look, with Medicare for All, we know why Medicare for All doesn't happen. Like, we know why. Because, like, insurance companies and a bunch of other, like, corporate leeches don't want it to happen. Like, we know why. We disagree with it, but we know why. We know why taxing the rich doesn't happen. We know why. But, like, you already got a $1.9 trillion stimulus package. Like, it's already passed the House. And Manchin and Sinema basically said that they would pass the package. Like, the minimum wage was already out. Like, that's one of the other sticking points. The parliamentarian took that out. So hypothetically, the big issues aside, so Manchin's already said he would vote for it. Manchin would not, even Manchin, in his quest for self-importance, wouldn't have sunk the stimulus bill over this phase out. It's not that important. It's not that important. And yet, here we are. Here we are. First edition Yu-Gi-Oh! Says, hey, Christo, it's 28 days later. 559, I changed my name to better suit my content. Great to see. Great to see. Fantastic. Everyone check them out. Check out their channel. Just probably do a search for that name and you'll see it. But thank you so much for the support. And for letting me know. It's helpful because, you recognize certain people's usernames. And if they change their names, it's hard to necessarily know who they are. So I do like to know, when a lot of the regulars stop by. My streams are big enough now that, it's hard for me to follow the chat directly, but they're still small enough. They're still cozy enough. They're still, cuddly cozy enough that I can still recognize a lot of the names. And I really do enjoy that. I really do enjoy that. So, of course I do want more people watching the stream, but I like being able to check out the folks. Yeah. We're not going to talk too much about the cancel culture thing. I did a video on it yesterday, but like my argument for why this whole cancel culture thing is happening right now in overdrive, like whether it's Mr. Potato Head or whether it's Dr. Seuss, The reason the right-wingers are making this an issue now in particular is because they are because they don't have anything to criticize Biden on. Like, this is not to say Biden is doing perfect. Of course not. This isn't me defending Joe Biden in any real way, but it is me saying, I suppose, that, Biden is, Biden is a fairly moderate president. And I don't see a lot of things that, like, right-wingers can legitimately get mad at him for. Right? Like, for instance, as we've been talking about, Republicans will vote against it in the House and the Senate. But the COVID bill, John says, nice sweater. John, thank you so much. Always appreciate it. Great to be noticed. The reality is that they know the COVID bill is popular. They know the stimulus package is popular. Republicans know that. They see the polling. They see the polling like we see the polling. They know it's popular. But they're still like, we don't care. We're going to vote against it. But Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, whatever, they can't devote 8 hours a day to ripping a bill that's popular. So, what's the news about? What's the news about? The news has to be about Dr. Seuss. The news has to be about Mr. Potato Head. The news has to be about, remember last week we did a video on it, making fun of Joe Biden's dog. Making fun of his dog for not being a handsome enough dog. You guys remember that? Making fun of Biden's dog, being like, his dog's not handsome enough. His dog's not handsome enough, guys. Don't like this dog. And they did a whole segment on that. They brought in a presidential historian to talk about how the dogs of previous presidents were way more presidential and better taken care of than Biden's dog. And that was the narrative. Like, that was the narrative from like the Biden people. It's wild. It's absolutely wild to me, guys. Totally. Ben Shapiro says, play Sailor Sable's CPAC Star Spangled Banner. We can maybe, let me see if I can find that. And then John Bartlett says, hey, I gotta say, I love the Discord. You people should join. Good reminder, while I'm here, let me drop the link. Well, I think some people did drop the link, but I'll drop the link again to the Discord. Somebody's asking if AOC should run for governor. My instinct is no, because I think her path is federal, and I think that I think the governor of New York is generally more moderate than the senators of New York. And so I think it would be harder for her to win a gubernatorial race than a Senate race. Even though they're elected by the same people, it's a statewide. My instinct is that it would be harder for her to win a governor's race. I would like to see Cynthia Nixon maybe run again, because I think she'd be better than Cuomo, obviously, given what we know. But I think AOC's path should be to run for Senate next. That's my view. And I don't know. I don't think governor is where she wants to go. I don't see it. Not yet. Maybe people disagree. We already see some new people. Wow, we got like 3 new people in the Discord. Great stuff. Okay, let me see if I can find this Sailor Sable thing. Okay, apparently okay. The context for this is that this is apparently the worst national anthem ever. So I'm going to let me set this up. We're gonna get this set up here. Let me get this window capture good. And we're gonna bring this over. Bring this down here. Good. Now let's pop this. Okay.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
I mean, okay. Like, okay, guys, I'm gonna be honest. I thought it was gonna be crazier. I mean, it wasn't great. But honestly, like, I was expecting her to be like something to be crazier, but maybe I'm just so desensitized with all the news I've been following that I'm like, unless like a meteorite crashes the stage right now, then nothing's going to impress me. But no, that was genuinely bad there. But Ben Shapiro, you got your wish. We played the clip. Now, I do want to play you guys something right here as well in a second, because I think I want to talk a little bit about. Like just like how insanely like cult-like the Republican Party remains. So like here's a clip.
Real quickly.
Here's a clip, and it is of the governor of Georgia. Now this is Brian Kemp. Now you might remember him. He was prominent during the debates around Georgia and the recount there, and how he and Brad Raffensperger became targets of Trump and so many others because they refused to basically invalidate their own electors. And so he became basically enemy number one of Donald Trump for weeks. Basically from Trump's election loss to the time he left office, very few people got more hate than Brian Kemp. And here's a clip of him basically saying, despite all that if Trump wins the nomination, he's on the Trump train. I'm just going to grab some water I'll be right back.
Real quickly, Donald Trump is the 24 nominee for Republicans. Would you support him? Absolutely. I'm going to support the nominee. As I said again, I work very hard for the president. I think his ideas and the great things will be part of our party for a long time in the future. And Republicans, we need to have a big tent. I mean, there's a lot of great ideas out there. We're not always going to get along, but I think the president deserves a lot of credit, and he's not going away.
Fair enough. Real quickly.
So a little bit to unpack there, obviously. A little bit to unpack. So, did you guys get that? So, he basically says that, like, no matter what he did to me, no matter what he did to democracy, no matter what he did to my state, I'm going to back him if he wins the nomination. There's no depth, I guess, to how much I will debase myself, to support this man. And you hear what he says? It's a big tent. There's a lot of good ideas and we have to explore them all. What he's essentially saying there then is you have people like those on January 6th, and you have people that were calling up Brad Raffensperger, aka Trump, demanding, that 12,700 and some votes or whatever it was be found so that Georgia can flip from Biden to Trump. And those people are part of the big tent. So basically, Q is part of the big tent. Trump is part of the big tent. The Capitol thugs are part of the big tent. That's what Brian Kemp is saying. And there's a couple reasons why. He's saying it. One, he's terrified of Trump. He's terrified of Trump and people like him. About primaries and all these sorts of things. He's terrified. He also realizes, though, that even if you could stand up to Trump and get rid of the Trumpian part of the Republican Party, you can't win without them. You can't. You can't win without them. The Republican Party already requires systematic election imbalances to win. It already requires that. They cannot win if they have like a system where everyone that wants to vote gets to vote and doesn't have to jump through a ton of hoops to vote. In that context, they don't win. They don't. In a context where they don't gerrymander districts, they don't win. They don't. And there's less you can do about this, but in the context where the Senate exists as a tool to overrepresent rural white people, they don't win. The Republican Party has won in my lifetime, and I was born in 87, 2 popular votes. They won the 1988 popular vote, and they won the 2004 popular vote. That's the only time they won the popular vote. Bush, the first time he won, he didn't win the popular vote. Trump didn't win the popular vote. In my life, twice, they've won the popular vote. It hasn't been, I think, since 1996 that the Republican Party actually won more votes in a Senate election than the Democrats. 1996. And they've controlled the Senate for much of the period between 1996 and now. The Republicans controlled the Senate from like 2014 to a few weeks ago, and never at that point did they actually have more votes for senators than the Democrats. Yes, I'm a spry 33. I'm turning 34 in just a few weeks, actually. So, you know, that it is what it is. I'm now officially more than 1/3 of the way to 100. We have a couple super chats. Jason with his the weekly black hat. Jason, thank you so much. And Leslie, thank you so much for the very generous support, Leslie, and for the karate video game vintage Super Nintendo controller. Thank you so much, Leslie. I very much appreciate it. Great to have you with that support. Thank you. And so, like, I think that's what this is about. It's a mixture of they're afraid of Trump, but they also know that at least for now, he's too integral. Because if you could cut the Trump movement out, you would never win again. Even with all the gerrymandering in the world, you would never win again. You would never win. No, Jason, no one is making anyone look cheap. People give what they can, and I very much appreciate all of it. Like, people will often support the channel and then say to me, I wish I could give more. And I feel like never feel like that. Never feel like that. People that support, whether it's my content or other creators you love or believe in or find entertaining or whatever, like, people are genuinely so grateful for any level of support, because people give what they can. I know a lot of people can't support the channel financially, especially now people are still out of work or just got back into work and have to build their savings up. But I mean, I very much appreciate people that support the channel. One thing people can do, and this is an issue for a lot of political channels right now, is just watch the content. If you talk to me, you talk to other political creators you love, our views have absolutely plummeted in the last few weeks. So if there's one thing everyone can do to support a channel, is when you see a video of a creator you like, click it. Because if it passes your eyeballs, YouTube says, bad video, don't show it to people. And that's how you get a video that just kind of fades away and doesn't generate any revenue, doesn't get seen by new potential subscribers. That's like something everyone can do. But never feel bad supporting me or other creators. Never feel bad. Zachary, whatever you want to do for support, there's multiple options. You can give super chats. You can do a one-time donation via PayPal. You can become a channel member here on YouTube, or you can give money on Patreon. If you do the ongoing ones, it doesn't matter on which one. One of the perks is that I put your name on my end cards, and it's something that I very much appreciate. So there's lots of ways you can support the channel. Now, one thing Zachary did mention was my new podcast, and I've been talking about it for a long time, and I want to spend some time talking about my new podcast. It is called Left Turn Canada. Now, for those who don't know, well, many of you know, but for those who don't know, I am a Canadian who primarily covers American politics on this channel, frankly, because YouTube is a volume game. For most creators, you derive your income from volume. A lot of people are very generous with their support, but the number one thing is, like, if your videos get views, that has that benefit. So from my perspective, it's something I've been producing, but I've always wanted to make more Canadian content, right? And so I started a new podcast called Make This Your Canada, or called Left Turn Canada, excuse me. And it is a weekly Canadian podcast. We have one episode up right now. I'll drop the SoundCloud link, but you can find it everywhere. I don't know if it's everywhere yet, but it's on Spotify, it's on SoundCloud, it's on Apple, now it's on Google. And it is a weekly, about an hour-long Canadian podcast. We're going to cover Canadian news, politics, mostly news and politics, but every once in a while we might talk culture, and the focus is going to be overwhelmingly Canadian. Now, that's going to include things that aren't Canada, but with a Canadian lens on it. So, for instance, first episode, we talked about Trump, but in the context of how Trump shaped Justin Trudeau's image in Canada and beyond Canada. For example, this week, we're having a special guest, Nikki Ashton, who's a member of parliament, a left-wing member of parliament from Manitoba. It's the equivalent of being a member of the House of Representatives for the United States, will be joining me and my co-host Andy to talk about an upcoming event she has with Jeremy Corbyn, where they're talking about issues of the global left. So it should be a really fun discussion. So that podcast is growing. We have plans for it. We'll probably be launching a Patreon for that at some point in particular, but we have no announcements on that yet. But it is a distinct project. It's not going to affect the amount of content I produce here, but it is something that I really wanted to do because I know a lot of my audience wants my opinion on Canadian politics, and I feel like that podcast is the best way to offer that to people and still do what I do here on YouTube, where the majority of my audience has come to me to talk about American politics from a progressive perspective. Well, yeah, exactly. So Nikki was she campaigned for Bernie. Actually, she took some time back in 2016 because she's from Manitoba, so she went down to some of the western states to canvass for Bernie on her own time, and she's great. The organization she's working with is called Progressive International. It includes Americans on the left. It includes people like Naomi Klein. They've done campaigns on trying to build global solidarity to take on mega corporations like Amazon, to address environmental issues and workers' issues. So we're going to be talking about that. But just in general, we're trying to make it so that it is accessible to Americans and just, non-Canadians, but that it isn't always like just trying to explain what Canada is. We're trying to find that balance. It might take us some time, but I don't know. Have any Americans listened to it, the first episode, and let me know what you think, because I'd love to know what you think of some of the things we're talking about. It's a good way to understand Canada from a left-wing perspective, which maybe you don't get. You might not get a whole lot of left-wing perspectives of Canada unless you really dig for them in the United States. So I'm excited about that project, and I hope you guys are too. Yeah. So it's definitely something we're looking forward to building going forward. Other details for instance, we might put some episodes or clips up on YouTube on a dedicated channel. These are all things that if they happen, we'll be sure to inform you. Oh, people wanted the link. I dropped it earlier, but here it is again. This is just the SoundCloud, but if you use this information, you can find it on Google, you can find it on iTunes, you can find it on Spotify, and I'm assuming some other ones as well, but a lot of people use those ones. And so I'm excited about that. So that was just a bit of self-promotion, and thanks for indulging me on that one. But I wanted to talk a little bit about something right here. One thing I think we're going to have a bigger discussion of is the filibuster. I don't know what the solution, guys, is. I don't know. Well, Samantha says, I watched it and was very informative. I thought you might get more play if you threw it up on YouTube channels, though. Yeah, the challenge is, with my YouTube, throwing it up on YouTube is it's very different content. One, it covers topics I don't cover often on YouTube. And two, even if I threw up like a relatively short, like 20-minute clip, it's very different from the shorter videos I put up. So, and we didn't record, at least for now, we're not recording video. At some point, maybe we'll record video and make it like a video podcast. But again, these are just, we just want to get the actual podcast up and running. So these are all things that we want to consider. I don't know if my audience is going to, that I've built, because the people that come to my streams regularly are not necessarily representative of my overall audience, which might only watch a couple videos of mine every now and then, right? But I think, like, honestly, we have to talk a little bit about the filibuster, because it's absolutely absurd that, like, Manchin and Sinema are just allowed to block everything. It's absolutely absurd what's happening. Look, and like one thing, I want to play this and fully acknowledging that we on this channel remember that Liz Warren was perhaps too slow to drop out and should have endorsed Bernie Sanders. And certain people shared emojis of her, which I never shared, but which I understand why people did. Maybe people will share some of those emojis right now. But basically, Liz Warren, to her credit, has been one of the loudest critics of the filibuster. And again, for those that don't know, the filibuster basically allows for senators to block a bill unless it can get 60 votes. It technically only needs 50 to pass, but 40 senators alone, 41 senators, can basically hold up debate indefinitely without doing anything really. So in effect, unless you're going to use the reconciliation process, which is very complicated and can't include everything, effectively, you need 60% of the Senate to pass anything. To pass anything. Right? It's undemocratic. And you think about it, you have to think about the context that the Democrats already represent through their 50 senators dozens of millions of more people than the 50 senators the Republicans represent. Now, that's the nature of the Senate. Like, that's the Senate. It is what it is. But it's a crisis of democracy when you think, how many people would 60 Democratic senators represent now? That's how many, you almost need a super majority of people to pass even routine legislation. We're not talking about constitutional reforms here. We're talking about routine legislation. Right? I want to play you this clip because this is a good clip by Warren. This is a good clip to distill like why the filibuster sucks and why it needs to go.
Do you think there is a practical vehicle by which you and your colleagues can get us a rise in the minimum wage this year? Do you think it can happen? Look,
Maddow, I love her, like, get us a rise. I know it's funny. Like, she's doing the right thing here, but it's funny to think like Rachel Maddow doesn't make a lot of money. She's just like, I make $12.30 an hour. Liz, I need a minimum wage bump.
Well, of course it can happen if we just get rid of the filibuster. Well, and look, I know I've been singing this song for a long time about the filibuster, but watch what's happening. Mitch McConnell right now has a veto over our being able to do anything unless we can twist ourselves into pretzels and make it fit through reconciliation. And so now the parliamentarian has said, sorry, that pretzel won't go in the bag. So we can't do...
I like that line, that pretzel won't go in the bag. And guys, by the way, can we get an F the parliamentarian in the chats here? I've already talked about it. What a bad ruling. What an awful ruling, guys. Sorry, I got distracted now. I'm going on parliamentarian busting for a second. That parliamentarian ruling was awful. awful, guys. Awful ruling. Because, like, let's be clear, that parliamentarian ruling was the minimum wage increase does not have an effect on the budget. But the Congressional Budget Office said it does. They said it does. So, the parliament, like, for some reason, the parliamentarian could just make a dubious ruling and everyone's just going to deal with it. Right? An unelected, unaccountable. Look, I don't even know their name. I think it's a woman. I don't know their name. You know what I mean? I didn't even know the parliamentarian could do this a couple days ago. And I cover U.S. politics like every day, hours a day. I didn't know that. So what do you think, like, a regular person that has to go do like a job 9 to 5, at a waitressing or driving a truck or whatever, and all of a sudden they hear, oh, because of the Senate parliamentarian, you don't get a minimum wage increase. Sorry. It's ridiculous. Senate parliamentarian.
Minimum wage through reconciliation. But if we say that we're going to get rid of the filibuster, we are going to go with majority rule the way the Constitution holds.
That's a key point. The filibuster is not in the Constitution. It comes out of what some people call a misinterpretation of and a mistranscribing of Senate rules going back to the 1800s, which basically made it so that there would be unlimited debate in the Senate. The House, there's strict time limits on debate, but in the Senate there isn't. But that's not mandated in the Constitution. That is something of a tradition in the Senate, that the Senate doesn't try to limit the amount of time for debate, but it's not constitutional. It's not rooted in what the founding fathers envisioned for the Senate, that it would be a place of unlimited stifling debate. And again, one thing that Warren doesn't note here, but is important, is it used to be the case that when you had a filibuster, you actually had to filibuster. You couldn't, for instance, just say, you don't have 60 votes. We have more than 41 senators that aren't willing to move this legislation forward, aka it's not going to happen. People had to go up in the Senate and give these like marathon speeches. They actually had to physically filibuster. So there was a potential limit on the ability to do so based on the human body, right? And so if you really wanted to filibuster, you had to put in the work. Now it's just a formality and you just get to say you're filibustering. And that was, of course, not in the Constitution either. That's the evolution of the filibuster.
For the House and the Senate, and we can actually pass the things we need to pass, then this isn't an issue. And understand, it's not just minimum wage. It's voter protection. It's environmental crisis issues. It's immigration. It's universal child care. It's college. It's gun safety. It's the things we need to pass to make this country work. And I want to be clear. It's the things the majority of Americans strongly support. Americans didn't send us to Washington to be some kind of debating society. They sent us here to get things done, and that's what we should do. And that means no veto for Mitch McConnell.
I mean, that was really good. Again, we've been critical of Liz Warren on this channel, but, because the U.S. Senate is what it is, she's probably one of the 2 or 3 or 4 best senators, sad as it is. But the reality is that she's right there. She's 100% right. Senate's not a debating club. They do have facilitation for longer debate in the Senate. The Senate does get more time to debate. The Senate, by virtue of being the Senate, by virtue of like its size, means that people get more time to speak, right? So for instance, you know, it makes sense because if you got 100 people, there's more time than if you have 435. But it's not a debating club. It's there to give consideration to legislation and to maybe be a little bit more forward-thinking, hypothetically, than the House, because you're only elected once every 6 years, so you don't always have to worry about every decision being immediately political to your own personal, outcomes. That's the hypothetics of the Senate. But beyond that, it's not supposed to be eternal. No, she isn't even the best from Massachusetts, but they have another good senator from Massachusetts. But the point is, she's right. What the Democrats are trying to pass are things they ran on and are popular. Things they ran on and are popular. Like, what more could you ask for? Right? And the one criticism I'll have of her there is it's not just Mitch McConnell that has a veto. It's also Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, because they don't want to get rid of the filibuster. Like, let's be clear. If they could get Sinema and Manchin to get rid of the filibuster, then the filibuster would be gone. But they don't want to do that. And look, you can be charitable to them. I'm not going to be. And say, like, okay, you believe in that the Senate should reach bipartisan compromise, and that the filibuster means that has to happen because it's very rare that any party wins 60 seats in the Senate. It's not likely to happen as much given how many states are polarized, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's unlikely, for instance, that not either the Democrats or Republicans are going to pick up 10 Senate seats next election. It's just really unlikely, right? So the reality is that the Democrats, you're going to need 60 votes, and it's going to have to come from both parties. But at some point, you have to see that the Republican Party is not a good faith actor in democracy. And they are using every tool they have to basically try and make it harder for people they don't like to vote in 2022. Right? That's simple reality. So Manchin and Sinema can say to themselves, we like the filibuster as a grand principle, but the effect of their principled action is to empower people doing harm to Democratic voters. Not just Democratic voters, of course. The Republicans hurt like white working class people as well. We know this. But the people that elected this Democratic majority are being harmed by the inaction of their own senators. And so Manchin and Sinema, at some point, they're not just against you because of a principled disagreement on the filibuster. They might as well just be against every policy. Because in effect, they are. If you're preventing people from passing policies based on a rule that is undemocratic, then you're upholding, the status quo that harms the people that came out in record numbers. Again, Biden got more votes than anyone in American history, in the highest turnout in an American election in like 100 years. And he won by like 7 million votes. And because two goddamn ghouls from Arizona and West Virginia are like, no, I like the filibuster actually. They don't get, nothing gets done. Okay, I think it was if if you can get rid of the filibuster. You can. The filibuster isn't codified anywhere in the Constitution. So the getting rid of the filibuster is all it requires is that a majority of senators agree to change the rules. Right? To change the rules. And so I think that it's important to see that, like, all they would need to do is if they could get Manchin and Sinema and any other Democrat that's on the fence about ending the filibuster to just end the filibuster, they would get the 50 Democrats. I'm assuming the 50 Republicans would be against. Kamala Harris could break the tie, and the filibuster would be gone. Now, they could either do it carte blanche, which is to say they could just get rid of it permanently and, or at least until the Republicans got enough votes to bring it back or whatever. Or they decided to bring it back. Or they could, hypothetically go to Manchin and Sinema and say, look, we get that you like the filibuster, but the Voting Rights Act is instrumental. And so maybe could you consider for this one piece of legislation only waiving the filibuster? And then on other legislation, no. They could do that as well. You could change the rules and then change them back. That's possible. These are all just rules of the Senate. And ultimately, the person that sets the people that set the rules of the Senate are the senators. That they set the rules. Which is, again, why when everyone's like, oh, the parliamentarian. Ultimately, the parliamentarian doesn't have any power. They are there to assist and advise Kamala Harris in her role as president of the Senate. But ultimately, decisions rest with Harris and with no one else. Right? Question mark asks, the Democrats have a small majority in the Senate, which gives Manchin leverage. The Democrats also have a slim majority in the House. Why isn't the squad using this leverage? Well, there's a couple differences. One, again, Manchin doesn't just have leverage over a piece of legislation, but over the entire functioning of the Senate. His leverage is much greater. Again, it's not just leverage on any particular bill, but if the Democrats want to be able to pass anything, they need to end the filibuster, and they can't end the filibuster without Manchin. There is no such equivalent in the House. So Manchin's leverage is more significant. But I would say that you have a point. You do have a point. You do have a point that there is an opportunity for those progressive people in Congress, the squad, Bush, Bowman, Marie Newman, to put their foot down from time to time and say to people, look, we really need this in a bill. We really need this in a bill. And we're going to withhold our votes if we don't get it. Like, they do have that opportunity. And in fact, I've noted this before, that they have more power now than they did between 2018 and 2020, because a lot of the Democrats that lost were moderates. Almost all of them were moderates or conservative Dems. So the Democrats, the progressives hold, if not always the balance of power, they sometimes do. And so I think they should use it more. Now, in terms of this first stimulus bill, I don't think they needed to use it that much, because the bill passed in the House was actually pretty decent. Yeah, the $2,000 checks were carved down to $1,400, and that's insufficient. But That bill had a $15 minimum wage in it, right? The House stimulus bill is decent, right? It's a decent bill, and I could see why no progressive would vote against it. Now, the question is, when they send it back, what do they do? Do they, for instance, use their leverage or consider using their leverage to hold up the stimulus bill over these checks? Do they, for instance, say, we want the part of the bill removed that for instance, takes checks away from 17 million people? We want to remove that provision. You know? And if you don't, we're not going to vote for the bill. I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't want to speculate too much. I think one person to follow on this is Pramila Jayapal. Jayapal is the head of the Progressive Caucus. And so I wonder if she's going to make a move. She actually tweeted 40 minutes ago from her representative account, Rep Jayapal, don't take relief out of a relief package, right? So maybe that's a hint that she's certainly not happy. But Jayapal would be the sort of person that would have this leverage, because the Progressive Caucus, which includes people that are, I think, actually not really progressive, is still, you know, the largest left-wing voting bloc in the Congress. And I do think that it's they do have that opportunity. So I'm not exactly sure what the strategy is. She's also come out and criticized the removal of the $15 minimum wage. So the question is going to be, do they use that power? But then it's hard because people are hurting for the extension of EI and these sorts of things. So I don't know what the progressives are going to do. But you're right, question mark, that ultimately it's less power than what Manchin has, but they do have the opportunity to hold up bills. And this is what I said, going back to that forced to vote debate, which I don't want to get back into, back from December. I said that's not the place to use that power, because you do not have enough votes. You do not have enough votes. You won't even get 100 votes probably for Medicare for all. But this legislation maybe is. Right? This is not about a hypothetical piece of legislation that Joe Biden ran against. This is about preserving the original bill. You have a much stronger argument to use a procedural choke point to preserve what the House originally ran on. It's not about some pie in the sky thing. It's saying we promised people a $15 minimum wage, and we promised people $2,000 checks. And this Senate revision of our legislation removes some things that we don't want removed. And so we're not going to vote for it. I don't know though. It's hard because Manchin and the Republicans, they don't care. I guess they don't care about people. But AOC and the squad, they do. And I think sometimes that compassion gets exploited by these ghouls, because they're like, yeah, let the working class starve. We don't care. Kill the bill. We don't care. Like we barely want to give this to people anyway, but we're being forced because the people are demanding it. So yeah, you go ahead and you kill the bill. So it's hard. I don't know what the answer is fully, but you're right that they do have that power. They have that muscle, and they should flex it more. Yeah. Again, as people are noting, the parliamentarian usually is listened to, and I think that's the right thing, to listen to them generally. But they have been overruled, and ultimately they are there to advise. They say to Harris, I've interpreted the issue before us, and here is my interpretation. Right? And then ultimately, it's Kamala Harris's decision as president of the Senate about what to do. Should she listen to the parliamentarian or not? And my view here is both because I think the parliamentarian's ruling is wrong, and also because it's such a central part of your campaign that I would overrule the parliamentarian. Leslie Brown asks or says Joe Manchin won't vote to end the filibuster because he gets money from a pro-life PAC, a lot of money. I'm not sure about the details of that, Leslie, but I do know that he does get money from such a group. That would make some sense because perhaps Republicans are worried that if the filibuster went down, any of the legislation they would pass to make it harder for a woman to exercise her basic human rights would melt away. Although you would maybe make the argument there that even if Manchin wasn't against the filibuster, he might vote down legislation there too. So hypothetically, you could have Manchin say to people, look, I'll get rid of the filibuster for this legislation, but not for anything to do with the groups that fund me. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's probably part of the discussion too. But yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. But it also, see, a lot of Democrats get a lot of money from a lot of shady sources, right? And a lot of them still want to get rid of the filibuster because, and you know, Hassan, I don't know if you guys watch Hassan on Twitch, he made a really good point a few weeks ago. And I think I agree with him, at least for the most part, when he said there's a generational divide in the Democratic Party. There's a generational divide. And that for the most part, some of the old dogs, the veterans are believers in this sort of mythical bipartisanship. This mythical compromise, which doesn't really exist, at least not anymore. But the younger Betty's much. Thank you so much. I did see the sticker. I see the message retracted. Thank you so much for the support. I very much appreciate it, though. These older figures are like, we gotta compromise. We need to work with Republicans. Some of the younger Democrats, even some of the ones in the moderate wing of the Democratic Party, we're not just talking about like the progressives, they seem more willing to fight. There seems to be more and more Democrats, including non-progressives, that are like, the filibuster's gotta go. Filibuster's gotta go. It prevents us from doing our jobs. And if you think, like, even selfishly, if you're a corporate Democrat, it's like, you want to win elections. You want to win elections and get donations and amass power and amass wealth for yourself. And one of the ways to do all of that is to actually be powerful, right? You have to be powerful, or people perceive you as powerful, if you want the corporate money and the lobbying gig after you leave. But the filibuster makes pretty much every Democrat in the House, whether they're a progressive or a moderate, absolutely powerless. Because it doesn't matter. Even if the Democrats, instead of losing 15 seats, won 15 seats in the House, they had an absolute, like a heavy, even a bigger majority than last time. Let's say like a 50-seat majority. They could easily pass anything they wanted in the House. Easily. But every single one of those Congress people, at the end of the day, knows they have no power. Because Joe, I hate everything Manchin, can block it with the filibuster. Or, you know, you need 10 Republicans, even if you get Manchin and Sinema on a bill to pass it. And so I think that, honestly, this is a good sign. Because while I think a lot of these, like, Hakeem Jeffries types are awful, if the corporate Democrats actually grow a goddamn spine, maybe they'll be willing to fight a little bit harder. Because until now, Democrats have only ever fought the left wing of their own party. Oh yeah, and that's another thing. And I mean, I've noted this in my videos on this, guys. Like the $15 by 2024, 2020, it's actually 2025, Kathy, I believe. It's actually 2025, not 2020, not 2024, is already a deep compromise. Like, that's already the compromise. Like, it goes without saying, right? That the minimum wage should already be $15 an hour. Or at least it should, like, they should be, like, you know, on the path to it. But like Nina Turner and so many have said, the fight for 15 really started back in like 2012. And so, like, it should have been implemented then and then rolled out, and we should have been at $15 3 years ago. Right? It's wild to me. It's already, like AOC's noted it, it's already the compromise. It's already not enough, and it's probably too slow. And I get it. Like, look, you phase it in to help businesses adjust, and that's fair. But businesses, yes, including small businesses, like, I know that's controversial, but even small businesses have gotten like 13 years, a 13 year vacation from any mandatory wage increases, at least if you live in certain states. So I know some states have their own minimum wages. So whether you're a big corporation or you're a mom and pop, for the entire 2010s, you didn't have to give your worker a single cent extra, even though everything else got more expensive for that worker. They estimate that people earning minimum wage make 25% less now than they did if they earned minimum wage when it hit $7.25. Right? So, like, employers have gotten 13, 12, whatever, how many years it is, of a free wage vacation. And so I'm not altogether sympathetic to people there. So, like, it's already a compromise to the employers. It's already a gift to the employer class that they get 5 years to get to $15. I don't know. You know? And of course, what could happen, and this is what happened here in Ontario, actually. We had a quicker phase-in than 5 years, but the phase-in happened gradually, and we got to $14 an hour here in Ontario, Canada's biggest province. We got to 14. A conservative government got elected, and they canceled the upcoming $1 increase. And so we don't have a $14 minimum wage, $15 minimum wage. And so hypothetically, I think, based on this legislation, they could, even if they do pass it, based on how it is, a new Republican administration could come in and cancel the wage increase. And it might not get to 15. Yeah, so, like, and that's an argument to people. Like, remind people that when they're like, oh, if you raise wages, it'll just make the cost of everything rise. And, like, let people know that, like, the cost of things already rise. Costs are already rising. Right? But, like, costs are already rising. And the poorest people are the ones getting hurt most by it. Right? Like, again, if minimum wage doesn't go up, and rent does, and food does, and other necessities do, and other just things people want, because poor, again, controversially, poor people deserve nice things too, then they'll have less and less functional money, despite the fact that they work just as hard. Right? So I'm not I don't care. Yeah, if raising the minimum wage does cause minor inflation, which there are debates about that, I don't care. I don't care. Because the minimum wage worker deserves a raise. If I have to spend a little bit more on my goods because of it, so be it. I'd spend a lot more, frankly. I'd spend a lot more to guarantee every person in Canada, or if I lived in the States, to guarantee everyone had a good living wage. I'd spend a ton more. Well, yeah, and that's another thing too, right? Like, I mean, there are arguments you could make from like a bipartisan perspective on this. Like, Bernie's made these points where it's like, look, if you're like a free market person, maybe your like libertarianism leads you to believe that the best minimum wage is no minimum wage. But if you, one of the issues is that, as Samantha kind of hints at there in the comments, and the reason I can see her comment so easily is because, one, she helps me moderate these, but two, she's a member of the channel. These neat little circles are for people that have joined the YouTube channel and give a contribution to the channel. So that's just like an FYI to folks. But what she said there was very important. Like, a lot of these jobs, whether it's like working at a McDonald's or at a Walmart or at any sort of service industry place, the people can only survive because of social assistance. And that's not me blaming those workers. Those workers need to do what they can to take care of themselves and their families. So those workers deserve all the social assistance in the world. Improve it. Give them more. But it is very telling that these corporations are subsidized by the poverty of their own staff. Right? It should be tied to the that's a major issue to me. That's a major issue. And if you want to fight corporate welfare, if you want to fight free handouts, look at how like Walmart could not function in many places if all of a sudden their workers couldn't get food stamps. I remember this. This is from a long time ago, I think. Let me know if I'm wrong, if people remember this. But like back in the day, it might have been an old Colbert or an old Jon Stewart or something like that. And they did a segment on how, or maybe it was just like a news thing, but they did a segment on how McDonald's and these companies were giving people like here's how to do a budget. Because the implication is your workers are stupid, not that they just don't have enough money. And on some of the budgets, it included like no money for food. Like no money for food. And so you say to yourself, okay, so what's the implication here? These companies in some cases, guys, have staff at corporate offices that help their workers get social assistance. Because it's cheaper for these companies to have their HR staff dedicate themselves to getting their floor workers, their people that work at the actual stores, social assistance. It saves them money. if you raise the minimum wage, you will reduce the amount of people working full-time that still need social assistance. You won't eliminate it, but you will reduce it. Well, of course, you're right, loner weirdo. But it's also like when they're trying to do it as corporate PR, where they're like, it's okay, our workers aren't starving on the brink of perishing. We help them make a budget, and the budget works if you don't have food and other things, right? And medicine and those sorts of things. And so these companies realize that they cannot function without their workers. And so they must find a way to keep these people alive. And the only way they can do that, well, there's multiple ways. One is they could raise their wages, but God forbid they do that, right? Another way is they ensure these workers get social assistance. Well, it does, Anmar. That is an argument. So the debate, it's actually very interesting because the Congressional Budget Office, when they were asked what the economic effects of the minimum wage would be, they actually, and I disagree with their interpretation, but economists are divided on the issue. They argued that it will, at least in the immediate term, lead to higher unemployment, which will lead to more people getting unemployment insurance, and therefore, and also fewer people paying taxes because they don't work. So the Congressional Budget Office recently, just like when they were studying it for the stimulus bill, they said it would cost money for the federal government. But you could make the other argument that less people would need food stamps and other forms of social assistance, and that, yes, I would make the argument, personally, that at least over the medium term, a stronger consumer base among the poor and working class will have better prospects of economic prosperity, and that will probably create more jobs, help sustain small businesses, help sustain communities, and I think that will have positive economic effects. That's my argument, at least, right? So, from my perspective, it's that it would increase it. But the point was from Bernie was that he didn't care what the CBO said, because he knows the CBO report had like a conservative bias. But what that showed was that it did have an economic effect, which means it should have been includable in the stimulus package. The items have to be shown to have a substantive direct effect on the budget, and the minimum wage does. Whether you take the right-wing position that it increases unemployment, or whether you take the left-wing position that it decreases reliance on social programs. So guys, I'm going to wrap the stream. I normally wrap between 10 and 10:30. Getting a little tired myself right now, but this was great. I want to remind folks, if you're new to the channel, to click the subscribe button. It brings you to my channel, gets you daily political content from a progressive perspective that I'm sure you'll enjoy if you enjoyed this stream. Also, if you haven't yet, if you are subscribed but you haven't yet, please click that bell and turn on all notifications. And it really helps me out when you get those notifications, you watch the video. When you do that, YouTube takes that as a signal to show my video to more people, whether it's subscribers that don't always watch or whether it's new people. And that's how the channel, grows. And that's frankly how the channel derives most of its income, which is from ad revenue. And as I noted earlier, not to be like a downer or anything, but political channels, it's not just me, but it's a lot of us, have seen a decline in the last few weeks. And so it's important that, our audiences stay engaged so that when the big news comes back, we're ready to cover it and we don't have to drop out of covering politics because it's not feasible anymore. If you want to support the channel, that's one thing everyone can do. Of course, you can support the channel here by joining. You can support it on Patreon. You can support it on PayPal. One more time, I want to drop the link for my new podcast. It is a Canadian podcast focusing on Canadian news. I know it might not be for everyone, but at least give it a try. The first episode is up. It's not just on SoundCloud, of course. It's in other places, so do check it out. I want to redrop the Discord. The Discord is a great place to hang out, chat with people, many of whom are here tonight, talking about, just what's happening in the news, share some memes, other videos. It's also a good place because if I have to post a video that doesn't have a notification, because you only get so many notifications a day, I often let people know there that I've posted a video. And so that is something to consider. And finally, just to let you guys know, this is my most recent video. If you guys want to check it out, it's a good distillation of some of our earlier discussions. Do me a favor, and on the way out, give that one a watch. Very much appreciate it. Have a good one, guys. I will see you next Wednesday for a stream, and at the very least, I'll still be streaming once a week. Demetrios is back in daycare. That's my son, Demetrios. You guys saw that adorable picture of him that I shared in the community tab. Go check that out. But he is, he's back in daycare, and so because of that, I might have a bit more free time. So maybe I'll look at streaming a little bit more. Maybe I'll add a second night to the week. I'm not sure, but something to consider. Have a good one, guys. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.